Welcome back. Really happy to see you again. And if you're new, even better. Nah, not even better. It's about the same. Thanks so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, I'll just kind of go over. I am in the process of swapping a 3SGE beams into my Toyota Tacoma. No, if you've watched previous episodes, this is not the inside of a Toyota Tacoma. So, if you thought that, you got some eagle eyes, brother. But anyway, thank you again for tuning in. If you haven't seen it up to this point, basically as of now, I've got the engine in, so it fits. I didn't have to cut the cross member, do any of the things that I was kind of fearing that I might have to do. It really fits incredibly well. So today, I'm gonna go through the process of, I'm gonna basically put on the transmission and then try and fit it again, because when you put a transmission on something, you're now putting the engine in as well as the trans, and the trans only fits in the tunnel a certain way. So it tells a lot. So that's basically what we're going to be doing today. So to start it off, I needed to go ahead and remove the engine from the trucks. Got the engine kind of ready to pull, because now it's time to attach the trans. Did discover, I think this trans has been out before, because those threads look a bit mucked up. So I'll just run a tap through it and should be good to go. So that's what I did. Went ahead, attached the crane, pulled the engine out. Nothing too crazy there. So before I go and actually attach the trans to the engine and try and put that in, I did go ahead and actually remove the tripod shifter itself, the assembly off of it, just because I figured that was going to be getting in the way and I was going to be flipping it around. You can actually change the shifter position of the J160 by about 2 inches, which is really, really useful. And that information came from Outsider Mike with his Beams 86. So big thank you to him. But here's a video of basically how I removed it. It's really nothing too crazy. I just used a couple of flat blade screwdrivers, kind of get in there, pry it, kind of rock it back and forth until it comes off, remove a couple bolts. It's very simple and not a big deal at all. So from here, it was time for me to actually go and mate the engine and transmission together. So what I've learned, sometimes it's a lot easier because there's little dowels on there, right, that actually can kind of hold on to the trans, but they're quite short. So what I found, and I'm pretty sure I learned this from Al at the Skid Factory, I could be wrong on that, but he's wealth of knowledge. And if you don't watch the Skid Factory or haven't looked at it, I highly, highly recommend them. They go into a lot of technical detail. At least their early stuff did. Their more recent stuff isn't as technical, but if you go back, you'll see all the stuff. The reason they don't go into that technical detail with a lot of the stuff now is because they've already covered it prior. But that's enough, talking about an awesome YouTube channel that you should definitely go check out. But yes, what I was getting back to, basically, I just cut down 2 bolts with the same threading and size as the transmission bolts. Just cut the heads off of them. I actually used 7M head bolts. Yeah. So you just cut the heads off of those, put those in there, and they act as, much longer studs that allow you to kind of get it in there, kind of rock it back and forth and make sure everything lines up properly even before it gets on those dowels. That's even more helpful if you're trying to do this while it's already in the engine's in the vehicle and you're putting it up and you're kind of lifting and pushing it up and all that. Makes your life so much easier. So highly, highly recommend. If you've never done that before, it's a major hack, life hack, car hack. All of those sound super lame, but it's incredibly helpful and I cannot recommend it enough. Okay, and now that it's all mated up, it was time to try putting it in the truck. Now, what possessed me to think that if I couldn't remove the original engine and trans out of the vehicle, and it's like 6 to 8 inches shorter, the old transmission, than the new J160. Why did I think it would work? But whatever, I tried it anyway. No, didn't work. I tried 4 to 5 different ways, tried changing the angle where I mounted the bolts for the engine leveler, everything. I couldn't get it to happen. And after about 4 to 5 tries, I was just dinging up my firewall. I was not having a great time. So I ended up just deciding, all right, this isn't going to work. I'm done doing this. So I pulled it out and I decided to do them separately. So that's what I did. I went ahead and separated them. And then that kind of brings us to the next part where I'm going to put them in separately. Went ahead, dropped the engine in, and then it was actually time to try and put the trans up, just like, you know, reverse of doing the old one for the 2RZ with the W series trans. And as I stated in the previous video, it sucks doing a clutch on the stock to two-wheel drive Tacomas. Like, absolutely awful. So like I said, it was time to try and change tactics. So that's what I did, right? Drop the engine in, and now it's time to try and put the trans in separately. So right, engine's already in, gonna try putting in the trans. And here you can actually see why it's so terrible here. Figured I would take some time to explain why you can't really put this engine and trans in all as one unit. And it's because of this cross member. So this cross member doesn't bolt in, it's welded in the way that the original Toyota Trans mounts is there's something that kind of goes around here like so, and it kind of mounts off of this. So even when you wanted to change a clutch on the old one, anyone who had a Tacoma would know this, you could, you know, take that off, but the trans, you would still have to kind of jimmy it out, kind of shimmy it, kind of get it out, and then kind of bring it down and out. And because this trans is so much longer than the original one by about, I think it's about 10 inches. Is it 10? It's like 8 maybe. You can see I would have to get a ridiculous angle to try and get it in there, and then I have to still somehow get it up here. And I'm not saying it's absolutely impossible, but I tried about 4 or 5 times with different configurations on my engine leveler, and I just couldn't get it. I just kept dinging up my firewall, and I just decided, all right, well, I'm gonna try and just do it separately. So I got the engine in. You can see it's just on wood blocks, but it fits incredibly well. I'm gonna see if I can get this trans up, and I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna do that yet, because it needs to kind of come out and then in and then go up. All right, so the trans is over the cross member now. Yeah, so the trans jag did not work. I kind of thought it wouldn't, just because it has to kind of go up in and at an angle. So I just kind of stayed on the other side over there and used my legs to pump that up and down in order to get this part up. And then once it was kind of at enough of an angle, I kind of just shoved it all the way to the top that I could with my force being in front of it. And then I just kind of got up here, and then I grabbed that 4x4 and kind of stuck it right into the bell housing right there. I put in my little helper locating stud things. You can see it there. To try and help me get the trans up. So now I just gotta lift it up and hopefully, I'm out of breath. Hopefully do that. All right. Yeah, the trans is in. I mean, it's bolted in. It's got like 4 or 5 bolts in it. But yeah, you can definitely see it's flush against there. I'm gonna pull this jack out, and then I'm gonna start another clip, and I'm gonna show you pretty much how everything kind of fits. But yeah, so first one, I'm just gonna lower this jack. I got it on some industry standard engine mounts, also known as pieces of wood from a table that I disassembled. And yeah, so I'll pick it up in a minute. So as you can see, it sucked to get that trans up there. I did get it done, got the trans up there, all bolted up, and as you can see, it actually fits pretty well. It's quite tight on some sides, and when you really kind of look at it from, you know, looking at just the tunnel clearance on the passenger side, as well as from the engine bay side where the starter is, it's going to need a little bit of clearancing. Not a big deal. Just going to get the old sledgehammer out, probably mini sledge, and just go to town on the old tranny tunnel.
Yappe.
And then here kind of shows where the trans is going to kind of end up. You can kind of see with rough tape measurements where the shifter is going to end up. I haven't completely decided which of the two shifter locations I'm going to use. I'm not really going to work on that until basically the engine and trans are mounted, until they're exactly where I know they're going to be. Then I'll be able to figure out where I want that shifter, because I'm also not going to be using the stock Tacoma seat anymore, although technically that's not the original stock Tacoma seat. I'm not going to get into that. Okay, so now after you saw that, how everything kind of went down, you saw it's not a lot of fun for me to install the trans. At this point, I wanted to try and keep this as simple as possible, right? I didn't want to have to cut out cross members, do a bunch of stuff if I didn't have to. And realistically, I don't have to cut out the trans cross member. I probably could make it work, but is that the right thing to do for future Tim in this situation? And on top of that, I'm just really kind of iffy on whether or not I want to keep that stock trans mount, or if I want to make my life easier and build my own custom one that is actually removable. Now, that would actually be a little bit difficult, purely because I should have some photos. The actual emergency brake, there's a bracket and a couple of things that come off of that same cross member. And, emergency brake? Parking brake. One of the big reasons that I really don't want to get rid of the stock cross member is the factory parking brake. There's two parts of it. There's a little bracket on the front that holds the actual cable. And then on the back side, there's a separate one that actually holds the arm that pivots on it. So if I ended up, see, at this point, I'm really just kind of trying to decide, do I cut the cross member out and just build a new one? Kind of leaning towards doing that, honestly. Yeah. Well, so I guess we'll talk about the pros and cons, right? So the pros, I mean, way easier for the future me, right? If I ever have to take it out, clutch, something goes wrong, whatever, be much, much easier to remove if the actual cross member is removable itself. I really think that's the only real pro. And the only other con is just that it's going to take me a lot of time and, frankly, a lot of effort to recreate it to work with the original parking brake. Now, I know a lot of people will probably be like, well, you don't need the original parking brake. That's your opinion, and it's wrong, because parking brakes are wonderful. I'm an old man, and I went 6 years without a working parking brake on that truck. And I just recently fixed it. So, yeah, no, it's staying, and that's the end of it. So yes, I know I'm making my life more difficult, but I'm just kind of bringing you along with kind of my thought process. If you haven't noticed already, I really overthink things. I overthink them, frankly, to death.
No freaking titties style. No freaking titties.
So I think at this point, I am leaning towards removing the cross member and building my own. But it's also going to be a major pain and going to make the project take a lot longer. Whatever, those are the pros and cons. I'll work on what direction I want to take everything. So thank you so very much for watching this video. I know it really wasn't jam-packed with stuff. A lot of this stuff takes me a long time. So if you want, you can definitely leave feedback saying, oh, we'd rather have longer videos that actually more kind of happens, or this is kind of how I'm able to keep to the 2-week kind of schedule that I set myself. So yeah, feel free to sound off. Let me know what you think. If you'd prefer like 30-40 minute episodes with just a lot more getting done, or these shorter ones that are easier to digest and kind of see information about this swap, because there just isn't a lot of information about it. Like I said, since we last spoke, I did find one Tacoma in the United States that does have a beam swap. Totally different than mine, though. It is two-wheel drive, but it's turbo, full standalone, making like 450, 500 horsepower. Like, it's wild. And pretty much the exact opposite that I'm going for. And there's no information. It was just a shop that did it for a customer. They didn't document anything. So once again, still haven't found anything that will necessarily help me figure this out. I'm really not sure if any of that's interesting to anyone other than me. But yeah, thanks again for watching. I hope to see you guys in the next one. We will be basically making the decision whether or not I cut that cross member out or not. And then clearancing the tunnel, probably just clearancing and getting everything ready to put the engine exactly where I want it, and then starting to build engine mounts. I don't think engine mounts will happen in the next episode. They may, but I don't think so. I think that's going to be its own dedicated episode. If you stayed to the end of this video, thank you so much. If not, I know you're not listening anymore, but I totally understand. This isn't the most riveting content in the world. But it really does mean the world to me that that you guys watch this, and you know, people seem to be enjoying it. So I'll see you guys in hopefully 2 weeks. Take care.
Eating basement dwellers, only Chico. You really think I came as far to pussy out and zip? No, this ain't no motherfucking Panic at the Disco.